Man, we're getting into some critical situations with teams, especially if you, through the first quarter of the season, if you didn't necessarily play as well as you'd like to play, if you've given away a game, if you lost a game that you didn't think that you should lose. And that's what both these teams. People were worried about the Rams. Are they going to have post-Super Bowl hangover? Now, the signs of a post-season hangover, typically, they don't come till around the middle of the season. But I do think that with Jared Goff, with Sean McVay, people have caught up to their system. People are more familiar. There are less players running wide open. Everything, the throws are more contested. The running scheme has been found out. And then here you have Seattle. Nick was on Seattle before the season. I just thought it was just going to be a regular Seattle, a little 9-7. They might be 10-6. Nick, from the beginning, thought they were the best team in this division. He thought that the Rams would come back to the pack, but they lose at home to a Teddy Bridgewater New Orleans Saints, not a Drew Brees Saints. Like, you don't mind losing to the Saints, but if you look at that situation, the first game he takes over as a starter, you lose at home, a game they can't be proud of. It is a matchup. Both of these teams are built to face one another. When the Rams front office, when they look about the division, it's no disrespect to the Cardinals and the 49ers. But when they look at a model, they look in Seattle and say that's the team with Russell Wilson that we're going to have to beat. And the Rams with their defense. They won't get back to the Super Bowl without their defense improving. Aaron Donald, I know, Aaron Donald's the best defensive player, one of the best players we have in the league. But I think this first part of the season, he's been doing a lot more freelancing, losing his gap control, leaving big gaping holes. We know they don't have good linebackers. We remember that from the Super Bowl. So now it's left that defense. How good is that defense? Jameis Winston scored 50 points against them. As much as Seattle likes to run the ball, Nick, as much as you hate it, they are ground and pound. They are from the 80s, 90s version of the NFL, facing the Rams team on a short week. How did the Rams team get back on track, man?
Yeah, Seattle runs their offense like old Marty Schottenheimer Chiefs teams, which is not that surprising because the offensive coordinator in Seattle is Marty Schottenheimer's son, Brian Schottenheimer. They're going to try to just run the ball, and try to have it close late and see if Russell Wilson can make some magic.
So we can't blame it on Darrell Bevell anymore.
No, it can't blame it on Darrell Bevell. It seems to maybe be an organizational philosophy where the organization seeks out coordinators that will run that style of offense. To answer your question, Jenna, I don't think it's a must-win game for either team because they're both 3-1, but I do think this game has an enormous air of importance for both teams because we just have, and I think a lot of the national media has somewhat disregarded San Francisco, in part because of their schedule and in part because they didn't play last week. So they were 3-0, but then they didn't play last week. We haven't seen them recently. What do we really make of them? The Week 1 game, people said, they won. That's because Jameis gave the game away. Then they dominate Cincinnati. But San Francisco's sitting there undefeated. The loser of tonight's game will be in third place in this division going into their Week 6 games. And in the NFC this year, I don't think anyone can say, well, we'll just go get the wild card. I think there's going to be an 11-win team that does not win the division in one of these divisions. In the NFC, when you only have 3 teams right now with a losing record, your only clear path to the postseason is going to be winning your division. Falling to third place as the loser of tonight's game is a big spot to be in. And I'll say for the Rams, to me, the Rams have more question marks at the moment because we don't know who they are. And I don't know if they know who they are. And if you can't rely on Todd Gurley, you mentioned questions about the defense, you've got to rely on Jared Goff. And Goff has to play a clean game tonight. He's got 20 turnovers in his last 12 games. Little point of comparison, the gold standard in the NFC, Aaron Rodgers, has 20 turnovers in his last 38 games. So Jared Goff's been turning the ball over almost twice per game, dating the last 3 quarters of the season that he's played. He's got to play a clean game tonight in Seattle where we know the crowd is going to be absolutely on fire.
It's exactly what I was going to say, on point. If you see these two teams both at 3-1 and you take a deeper dive, one team is just so much more consistent and reliable. The other one right now, who came off a season where they were reliable in what they were doing, seems to lack an identity right now. Seems to have obvious questions with that running game. Seems to have questions, albeit recent ones, with the quarterback. How do you make good on that if you're the Rams?
Well, I just believe it could be one of those seasons. We've seen teams like this before. That they've been on a couple-year playoff run. They're young. People predict them potentially to be a Super Bowl, represent the NFC, but you struggle. How healthy is Todd Gurley? Sean McVay, right now, is he a difference maker? Does he have a change-up pitch as he enters, I think it's his 4th season as the head coach?
Third season as the head coach. 4th season for Goff, 3rd season for McVay.
So does he have a change of pace? And Aaron Donald, can he get this defense to play the type of defense that we have seen them play over the last couple years? If those things, yes, they can get their season turned around. But you got to look at San Francisco and consider them to be legitimate. And you know Seattle is going to be there. Nick makes a great point. You better try to win your division in NFC because it is stacked. If you look at the NFC North, you got the Vikings, the Bears, and the Pack, and then you go
with the Lions sitting there, by the way, at 2-1. There's only 3 teams right now in the NFC that you can cross off. You feel like Washington can be crossed off, Arizona can be crossed off, and we had been saying the Giants can be crossed off, but I got to give the Giants credit in that they right now have 2 wins, and there's one other losing team in the NFC whose name I'm forgetting at the moment. But there's everyone in the conference is 2-2 or better except for 3 teams, and so you can go through the division and say there's 4 teams out there. Oh, Atlanta, the disappointing Atlanta Falcons. But even the Falcons, you see the Falcons on your schedule. You're not like that's an easy win.
No.
And so one other thing for the Rams for tonight. Jadeveon Clowney had his best game yet with the Seattle Seahawks this past week in their domination of Arizona. The Rams' offensive line is not the same unit it had. In the first 2 years under Sean McVay, and Eric Mangini made this point, he's right. You had all 5 starters the same each of those 2 seasons. You lost a couple offensive linemen. It hasn't been as productive. I know whenever a team is struggling out of nowhere, that is the first place you look to. I think with the Rams it applies, and with Clowney and that Ziggy Ansah and that pass rush for Seattle, that could be the difference in tonight's game.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.